Warning, the Warriors, we are all about truth, reality, facts. No matter how tough it is to hear, our goal is always education, prevention, critical analysis about human rights crimes, and the landscape in America surrounding especially big tech, legislation pending, always law enforcement and what is going on, all with our eye on keeping you and your children safe. And it is such an honor today. I truly mean this, Irv, when I say this, to have you joining us today. Irv Brandt joins us. I got to do it, Irv. Your bio is very extensive, but I'm going to read some of the highlights. Irv is a veteran of the U.S. Navy, served on the Atlanta Police Department as a patrol officer, along with working undercover vice and narcotics operations. Irv was a member of the U.S. Marshals Service for more than 20 years. His assignments included serving as a deputy marshal in the Superior Court of Washington, D.C., and the supervisor of the Fugitive Investigative Strike Team FIST in Las Vegas. After being promoted to the Investigative Operations Division, Irv served as a senior inspector at the International Investigations Branch, senior inspector of Interpol. I can't even read this, Irv. It's going on and on and on. You have conducted investigations in more than 50 countries on 6 continents, and you have received, Irv Brandt, numerous citations, including the Attorney General's Distinguished Service Award, and you have been certified as an expert witness on international investigations and extraditions by the U.S. District Court of Southern Florida. And you know what? Irv has been profiled in so many different on so many different media outlets, including America's Most Wanted, National Geographic Channel series Breakout, episode Escape to Vegas. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Irv also frequently appears as a panelist. I'm going to say you're an expert panelist on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. And that, in full disclosure, is where I first met Irv. And I thought, you know what? He's a warrior. I got to get him on the Warriors channel. And here he is today, here on this President's Day. And I want to thank Nancy for that. And you know what? Irv has also been a crime analyst for Fox Nation. And you know what? If that's not enough for you, Warriors, Irv Brandt is a fantastic author. His current book is Forever Solo, the tale, and they hear this, of Chief Inspector Jack Solo with the US Marshals Service, who is assigned to Interpol, Washington, D.C., and travels the world investigating cases. Combination, mystery, thriller, and adventure. Irv, I think that's your life story. Sounds like it's your life story to me. We're going to get into that. And you can find, I'm going to have everybody, because Irv's bio is so extensive in the body of the video, everything with links to everything about Irv, including how to get his newest book, Forever Solo. He's on X as Jack Solo author, Facebook, Instagram. Again, all the information will be laid out for you. And I've got to say, Irv, welcome to the Warriors.
Well, thank you, Lynn. It's an honor to be here. After our many appearances together on Crime Stories, I'm really grateful that you're going to have me on your show.
I mean, absolutely. And you know what? There's never enough time to talk when we do crime stories, really. So that's why I'm so thankful today that you're taking the time, you're joining us. Also, you're the West Coast, so you're joining me early. I appreciate all of that. I want to start with Irv. I truly mean this. Thank you for your service to our country. I mean, seriously, God bless you. I can't think of anything more important or giving in one's life than serving our country. You're in the Navy, then law enforcement, and now you're writing about it. So thank you for being such a warrior.
It's been an honor.
Now, Irv, before we get into the particulars, as I like to say, I want you to share with us a little nugget, something nobody knows about you, something you want to, I don't know, it could be a hobby, it could be where you grew up, just a little something you feel like dropping with us today.
Well, Lynn, you know, in life, things change, you know, with your age, with your points in your career. What was important at one time is not so important now. And I would say now that in retirement, after I've finished my law enforcement career, the things that are most important to me are, you know, of course, family, then, you know, working with other people who are still in their careers and are still fighting the good fight. And so that's what I like to do now. I like to support the people who are carrying on the fight that I'm no longer in. I want to keep contributing, as much as I can for as long as I can. And you and Nancy and the other people that we support that do battle for people who can't defend themselves is what's most important to me. As far as hobbies and things like that, well, I'm a writer, but I don't write. This is not my job. I don't write to make a profit, or I don't, write. This isn't my career. It's just what I do in retirement, and I do it solely for other people's enjoyment. I hope they enjoy the books that I write. Then, I still travel. I have friends all over the world, that I made during my law enforcement career at Interpol and international investigations. So I try to, keep in touch with them and see them as often as that I can. And that's life now, and I'm very happy with it. And I'm very pleased with it, and I'm very grateful, to this country and to the United States Marshals Service in particular for giving me a life that I truly enjoyed. I have no regrets.
I don't, Irv, that was a mouthful, because it sounds like when you call yourself retired, but what I love about you is you're still in it. You're staying active. You're staying connected. You're sharing your voice and expertise for others. And also, this is why you're a warrior. You, me, Nancy, a host of people that we work with, we are, the voice, or doing the work, in essence, that they can't do. There are so many vulnerable people, overwhelmed people. So I don't really consider you retired, but that's just my warrior's opinion. But I love that about you. You're not just sitting, on a lounge chair somewhere doing nothing, although that's nice sometimes, but that's not you. Now, I have to ask you, you have an interesting background, how you got into law enforcement. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. It was completely by mistake, Lynn. When I grew up, there were no law enforcement people in my family. When I was a child, I never dreamed of, one day becoming a police officer. I was a business major in college, and I always figured that, once I graduated, I would go into the business world and have a life like that. But in 1989, my senior year in college, the market crashed. Black Monday. Or what? Yeah, Black Monday. I'm sure you remembered it. The stock market crashed, and nobody was
Oh, I
hiring.
remember it well. Living here in
Right,
New York City, I remember it well. Yes.
right. And there were no jobs, you know,
Right.
in the business world. And I recently graduated from college, and I needed a job, and I became a Florida State probation and parole officer. And I worked there for a few years, and all the people I worked with, they liked me, but they said, you should be a police officer. That's where we think your field, you know, is best. And I tested for the Atlanta Police Department. They were gearing up for the Olympic Games that was going to come in 96. This was 1993. And I joined the Atlanta Police Department. And when I was at the Atlanta Police Department is when I realized, wow, I'm really good at this. I never realized that I would enjoy it so much and I would be good at it. And so from there, working patrol, working undercover operations, I went to the United States Marshals Service, and it just one thing led to another. I didn't think when I first got into law enforcement, I thought it was just a temporary job until the economy improved and I would go on to other things. But it became my whole life, then. And you know this. You get a satisfaction that's bigger, that money can't bring, when you help people, when you serve and you help people and you help defend people that can't defend themselves. That brings you, something in your heart that a Mercedes or a big house or, other material things just can't bring you. You get fulfilled in life. So I knew that I was never going to do anything else. This was my career. And when I went out to Las Vegas, when I transferred from Washington, D.C., I became the supervisor of the Fugitive Investigative Strike Team. And we worked a lot of big cases. Las Vegas is, of course, crime ridden. And between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, I didn't intentionally want to become famous, but I was on the news a lot, and I had been friends with John Walsh since the 90s, and I worked the tip lines for America's Most Wanted. And John used to call me and want to profile my cases. So, I worked with America's Most Wanted, and I worked some rather famous cases in National Geographic series, made one of their episodes, breakout series, on one of the cases that I worked. And I was promoted to Investigative Operations Division. So I went back to Washington, D.C. as a senior inspector at International Branch. And I also worked at Interpol. And I was also the chief inspector at the Office of International Affairs at Main Justice. And over the years, I traveled the world, and I worked with Interpol, and I worked with International doing operations and working with the other federal agencies. And something that would be of particular interest to you is I was the representative from the Interpol in the United States in Operation INFRA-C. And INFRA stands for International Fugitive Roundup and Apprehension, and C is Southeast Asia, because the government loves acronyms. So I was assigned to Interpol Bangkok, and our focus was sex offenders and human trafficking in Southeast Asia. And the operation was a huge success. I mean, we cleared so many cases, and I'm talking in the hundreds, and we destroyed, trafficking rings in Southeast Asia. And it was gratifying work. It really was. And I knew I didn't want to do anything else. And when I was back in Washington, D.C., my chief knew that, I was friends with John Walsh. And when they were doing their farewell tour, they were doing Asia. And I was with them in Cambodia. And it was basically to keep them safe. I don't know if you watched any of the episodes.
Yeah.
But I was there. You didn't see me because I wasn't there to be on camera. I was there to, work with the show. But I was carrying the sound boom for the.
Oh, they really put you to work.
They did.
Bodyguarding, sound boom, consultant. They got their money.
They did. So all the interviews that you saw when John was talking, with the people and the victims and everything else, I was just off camera holding the sound boom. And I was basically part of the crew. And like I said, it was an experience that I'll never forget. And I'm forever grateful to John and America's Most Wanted for including me, in that adventure that they had. And they went on to do many more good things. And he's still working hard and doing many good things. And I, wish him only the best.
Yeah, the John Walsh story is just horrific. I'll put a link to that actually, so people know what we're talking about, with John Walsh. But, he and his wife went on to form colleagues of ours, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They're a very big part of that, and still maintain. I believe they're on the board still, and part of all the fundraising and part of the mouthpieces that come out of that. And we're always posting. I mean, Irv, about 2,300 American kids go missing every day. Now, that being said, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, familial disputes, runaways, which is a big problem in the U.S. We don't talk about that. That's a lot of kids when you do the math. And so we're posting every day on the Warriors missing kids, because somebody somewhere hears, sees, knows something, because a lot of these vulnerable kids fall into this sex or labor trafficking. One of the things when I was looking up, I'm like, I saw Nancy a couple of times. I'm like, let me look up Irv Brandt, this US Marshals. And I saw, it goes back to something you said earlier. You said one of the most satisfying arrests you made were sex offenders because they will keep offending and leave a wake of misery if they are not caught. When I read that, Irv, I'm like, I'm getting Irv on the Warriors because that is exactly like the sentence that we need to put out there constantly, whether, we do a lot of work in our state capital, Albany here in New York, and also in DC. And that is a sentence that everybody, in my opinion, can understand. I want to ask you something. Two questions. If you want to weigh in at all about how you are looking at law enforcement today, the state of law enforcement, I'm going to say across the United States, what's going on. And then also, I'm throwing a lot at you, Irv, at once, but do you think, in your opinion, this sexual exploitation is a bigger crime today than when you were actually in it and working? Or do you think by virtue of the internet and more people knowing about it, it could be the same? Because I think, and I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in, I think the American public, we focus on the Warriors in America, even though we know trafficking and these are all global, crimes and connected, by the way. But I believe the American public, especially today, Irv, like they're becoming habituated. It's like normalized. They're hearing so much about sexual exploitation that they're closing the door. They're closing their eyes. Give us some thoughts on all of this.
No, I agree with you 100%, Lynn. The world has changed. Everyone knows that sex trafficking has gone on for centuries, and it's mostly organized crime, whether you're talking about the Chinese tongs or you're talking about the cartels or you're talking about, the mafia or the Russians and the crime syndicates and, how they use people that have no other options by force, by intimidation. And in today's world with the internet and things like that, it just gives them more tools, to lure people into this and take advantage of them. And I believe what you're saying is correct, that people become numb to it at some point. If you don't remind them, if you don't constantly remind them that this is going on, it becomes normalized, and it can't become normalized. We can't allow that to happen. We have to point out how horrific these crimes are. Because in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but I've worked in law enforcement basically my entire adult life. And I've worked violent crime task force and just the most heinous crimes that you can imagine. I've murder investigations, murder arrests, thefts, robberies, whatever. But in my opinion, the most heinous crime, the worst crime, are the sexual assaults and the sex trafficking crimes. Because when that happens, the victims are destroyed for their entire lives. If someone steals your car, you can get another car. You have insurance. If someone defrauds you of your money, well, you can make more money. But if someone takes advantage of you in that way, if you're trafficked, if you're controlled, it destroys you psychologically and it lasts the rest of your life. You don't come back from that. I mean, some semblance, yes, with some help and with some therapy, maybe you can, come back to a point, but never like you were. It destroys these people's lives. And the thing about it is when I would get cases and I prioritize them, these type of crimes were the top of the list. Murder is a heinous crime. There's no doubt. But chances of these people reoffending is very small because they already killed who they were mad at. They're not, unless they're a serial killer, they're not going to be, committing murders wherever they go. And it's the same way with if you're auto theft or, fraud or something like that. But these sexual predators, it's their nature. They're going to keep committing these crimes. And if you allow them to run loose, they're destroying lives everywhere they go. And if they go on the run, and especially if they go on to run outside of the United States, and they go to poor countries, And they're among people who have so few options. Their options are so limited. It's so easy for them to take advantage of these people and get away with it because their money and their influence, they can get away with it for a long time. So I made it my priority to apprehend these people. These people had to be stopped. These people had to be taken into custody before they destroyed more lives. And that's why organizations like NCMEC, which I worked with extensively, I had an office at the inside at the National Sex Offender Targeting Center, and NCMEC was on our floor. We had representatives from NCMEC, and they were always in my office, you know, with cases and looking for, children, especially out of the country, because they knew that was my area of expertise. And they would always start with, Irv, I know you're busy, but, and I'm like, I'm never too busy for you. Come into my office, have a seat. What do you got? What can I do to help? If I can use my contacts anywhere in the world, it doesn't have to be a warrant out for someone's arrest. If you're just looking for someone, you're concerned, you're worried, we're going to take care of it. I'm going to do whatever I can because this is like it's important to me also. You come first, then we'll get to the rest of the cases as we go along.
I have to ask you, Irv, with your career, and answer this any way you see fit. How do you and have you taken care of yourself? Because I've worked with what I would call like the most hardened men and women, and actually working on these types of things with children or sex trafficking, it wears them down. I have seen many a person after 2 or 3 years have complete breakdowns, and I mean that. How do you take care of yourself after
You know,
witnessing being part of all this?
Lynn, that is a really good question, and it's really hard. And for me, for what I did, I'm not the case agent. I wasn't a sex crimes detective, and so I'm coming in after the fact, after these things have happened, and I'm basically doing like fugitive investigations and things like that. And I would have, and I and I worked with the sex crime detectives, and I would go to their offices, whether it was in Los Angeles or Houston, things like that. And they would always want to start by handing me the case file and want me to look at the pictures and read the reports, the interviews and things like that. And Lynn, it was too hard on me. And I would tell him, I'm like, I have the utmost respect for you. I don't know how you do it for so long. I can't do this. I'm going to help you, but I can't read these reports every day. It haunts my dreams at night. It just breaks me down. I'm going to help you, but I couldn't have been a sex crimes detective. I don't think I'm made up that way. And so I have a lot of respect, for people that do it. And not only in law enforcement, but the people at NCMEC and other organizations that come to work and deal with this on a daily basis. See this, read this, talk to these people on a day. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it for so long. I see how anybody could do it for a little while, then move on because it's too hard. But people who dedicate their lives to it, Lynn, I couldn't tell you. That takes a very special person.
Yeah, there's just tremendous, I've noticed, burnout after a couple
Yes.
of years, um,
Yes.
which is so, it's disturbing, Irv, is that like you and me couldn't think of these types of crimes, like right? But these predators always, and I hear this all the time, especially in Washington. I'm actually getting tired of hearing this. This is where the warriors in Washington will say, with all due respect, because we don't take government money or anything like that. So I'm based on facts and reality and truths and all that stuff. Um, the predators are always 10 steps ahead of law enforcement. I've been hearing that for years. So I'm always like, oh, well, I don't understand. Why aren't all we, why aren't we all? 20 steps ahead, something, because these crimes they think of, they are so, for instance, I will bring in some international now, everything with sextortion, okay, especially with American
Hmm.
teen boys right now. The servers are all in Nigeria,
Correct.
and they have YouTube videos like how to do this, you know, instructing people. I'm not understanding. I'm going off in a few different directions here. Um, why can't we get more of a handle on what's happening? I'm going to say today, because I know the work we do at the Warriors, and we fight so hard for bipartisan legislation. We fight so hard to make the judicial system understand, right? Like trafficked people are victims. Let's go after the sex buyer, the pimp, the trafficker. Why, with your career in the last, I'm going to say 20, 30 years, more education, more awareness, why is it still so hard to get a grip on all of this?
Well, when you're talking about international crime, and you specifically mentioned Nigeria, and I understand that in any countries, outside of the U.S., that's not maybe Canada or some of the European countries that we work closely with. It takes cooperation between the agencies, and they have. I learned real quickly that a lot of countries don't care about it like we care about it. And I found that out when I was working in Southeast Asia. I spent a lot of time working in the Philippines and Cambodia and Thailand and
Yeah.
things like that. And the Cambodian National Police or the Royal Thai Police or the Philippine National Police and the Immigration Department, where I had teams of investigators. It was only important to them because it was important to me, because they liked me, because I had developed, a relationship with them. And so when I would come and start these investigations or operations, the US was funding it. And they liked me. So they would get on board, basically, is what I'm saying. They would say, okay, it's important to Irv. He wants to do this. So we're going to help. But if I wasn't there, that it would have been so low on their priority list. They don't human life to them, because life is so hard, in every other aspect, doesn't have the value like it has, like how we value it in the United States. And it's hard for us to transfer these, values outside of the United States into their countries and things like that, and make them. You can't make somebody care,
Right.
about something. And in especially countries, when you're talking about Africa or you're talking about Asia, where life is just cheap. Where in Cambodia, when I was with America's Most Wanted, and we were at the hotel, and I was reading an article just in the newspaper, an English newspaper, and they said that the price of a person that people were selling children was 5 kilos of rice. They would sell one of their children for 5 kilos of rice so their other children could live. And yes, it was illegal, but it was so commonplace, you know,
Yeah.
that it was just accepted as a norm. That would never go on in the United States. Lynn, that it would never. You couldn't sell one of your children in the United States. People would lose their minds. I mean, we would put you in prison for something like that. And people don't go to prison for something like that. And they don't care, it's so accepted what happens to those people after they're sold, no matter what it is, whether it's sex trafficking, whether it's forced labor or whatever. It's irrelevant to them, because life goes on. So in a very long-winded way, trying to answer your question, the short answer is these other countries don't care as much as we care in this country. So it's really hard for us, to compel these other countries to take it seriously and make it a priority. And the only tool that we have inside the United States is just what you're doing, is you get on Washington and you tell them this has to be a priority, and fund the Marshals Service, fund the FBI, fund these people to go and make this a priority. Give them the tools, you know, just like I did when I went over there. I'm coming in with the money, I'm coming in with the resources. Just get on board with me. Well, they will. And when you're talking about like a country like Nigeria that has all kinds of, other types of problems where people are just starving, in the streets, and you want them to take this seriously, you got to give them a reason. And that
Yeah.
has to come from the top. It can't come from the officer, working the case. He doesn't have that. It has to come from the top, which means our elected officials have to see it as a priority. They have to, if we're going to make even a dent, in this type of behavior.
Absolutely. You bring up so many good points there, Irv. Hopefully, I'll be going to Washington this week, unless we have this blizzard that might hit the area. But I have a lot of high hopes for this administration, Irv, and I want to point out all of this work we talk about is really bipartisan, right? It's doesn't belong to a political party. It's
No.
human rights abuses. When I
Yep.
started this, Irv, um, I couldn't even believe I'd be talking to you today. This is nothing. I fell into it. I got a calling. I feel like a nun. I'm not kidding. I got a calling working on a project 5.5 years ago about domestic violence that I was working on. And in doing research, it intersected with the human trafficking. And I just thought this cannot be going on in the United States. Like I always knew like Thailand, Philippines, Cambodia, but I thought here in the middle of New York City in America, no way. And then that's how I started in all this. I'm like, I'm just going to call myself an expert at this age. And I'm just going to go meet everybody I can meet. I'm going to go to Washington and march around all the offices and meet people. And that's just what I'm doing, the raising of the awareness. And you brought up a very good point. When people say to me, why does all this happen? Like across the globe and even in America, when people are hungry, it's very basic and want to eat a hamburger or want a little rice, they'll basically do anything to get that hamburger or that rice. And it sounds very crass when I say that, but that is the bottom line. When people are
It's the
hungry,
truth.
and you pointed out in these countries, we can't even imagine that kind of being that poor, having children you can't feed. So they sell off their children. It's I don't want to say it's part of their culture, but I think you know
It
what I
is
mean by
part of
that.
the culture.
It's like
I mean,
part of,
it's you don't want to say it because it doesn't sound good,
but
but
it is,
in
right?
reality, it is part of the culture. You
Yes.
save the ones you can save. Families are
Yes.
doing because they have no other options. If they want some of their children to live, they have to sacrifice a few. And it's harsh, but it's true. And to say it's part of the culture is accurate.
Okay. It was hard for me to say that, but that's what I think because it's so horrible to even say that kind of thing, but that's what it is. And we have to do better, all of us in
Mhm.
this world about I mean, no child should be for sale. But that's for another program. I want to ask you something that the Warriors will be working extensively on, part of a think tank in DC that will be coming up. We'll talk more about that, but also part of a new alliance for safer online with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence. Do you have any insight for us? Thoughts on AI? Very frightening. We work with a lot of tech people. They'll never admit it in the public, but I don't know where this is going, but we're getting on board. I'm going to make this my mission to educate people about this. What do you think?
I think you need to educate me. I fear, because I've been retired for a few years now, that the world is quickly passing me by.
No, it's
Since
not.
I'm
No, it's not.
since I'm not in the business and I'm not working on this daily. These new developments, things that change in computer technology and what you're talking about, AI, and things like that is something I've never dealt with. This is new, and I have to have someone like you explain it to me, because I don't understand it. What I do understand is it has the potential as a serious problem. I mean, a serious problem, and we need to get ahead of it. We need to be prepared for it. But that's about all I know about it.
Be
Is that
prepared. Irv says, be
yeah, be
prepared.
prepared.
That's what we're doing at the Warriors because, you know, people can hardly, the public, wrap their minds, and who could blame them, Irv, around sex trafficking. I don't like the word trafficking, Irv. Does that sound strange? I like the word slavery because
It is
that is
slavery.
it's a much more descriptive word that people can understand the enslavement. They seem to say to me like, oh, okay, I get it. So I go trafficking because that's what we use.
Right.
But we call it slavery, the enslavement of people.
It is
It's
an
it's
enslavement of
more
people,
and
and
it
other people don't understand it, because when you say slavery, they think
yes.
you're wearing chains, or something, you're being led around by a collar or something like that. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, taking people who have no other options and using them. And you've enslaved them. They do exactly what you tell them to do. You don't need, a guy on horseback with a whip, you know, lashing these people as they shuffle along in leg irons, or, chains on their wrists. They can be just as enslaved, you know, by force and intimidation. And so it is
Yeah.
what you say, slavery, is very accurate.
And it's also, I have so many people, they'll say to me, or, oh, why doesn't she run away? They don't understand the psychological brainwashing that
Correct.
goes on with all of this enslavement. We have teenagers that sleep in their own beds at night. They go home at night. Their boyfriend in high school, traffics them after school. We
Mhm.
have every kind of dynamic. It's not always that look that people think is that, those movies like Taken with Liam Neeson, glamorized kind of thing. We have older siblings that no parents in the house. They're taking care of the younger siblings. They can't do it. This is what they do. They're vulnerable. They have no money, and this is what these predators move in on, that vulnerability, and they want to feed their siblings. There are so many different facets that people always to understand about this. It's not it's such a complex issue with all of this. And I am going to tutor you, Irv, in everything about AI and AGI. Now, that's another one. I don't want to throw too much at you. Artificial generative intelligence, it creates its own. But just to point out something as an example, Irv, there was a story recently where a 14-year-old boy, great student, great son, everything great. And all of a sudden, his parents noticed he was losing weight. He was in his room a lot with the door closed. He was poor grades now in school, just becoming crazy. Again, the parents did everything right. So that argument I hear a lot, it's the parents' fault. No, no, no. I know great parents who had horrible kids and horrible parents who had great kids. So I'm kind of throwing, we know it all plays into it, but I'm throwing that one out the window for now. But what happened is the mom brought him to a therapist, did everything she could. And then she decided one night, I'm going to go in his phone and see what's going on there. And she found he was in a relationship with a bot. And a bot does not really exist. And this had been going on for some months, having this kind of love affair, believe it or not, with a bot who was based on a character out of a kind of a comic book. I'm just going to leave it at that. And thank goodness the mother did this, went into the phone, because the bot was directing this teen boy to then go and kill his parents. And that probably would have been, he was in such distress and had just devolved into this kind of horrible hiding behind a door that he probably would have done that. So I am pointing out that, we have issues like that. This is where the AI plays into bots and fakeness that we really do have to get ahead of. And frankly, we're behind. However, we do have good news out of Washington. Something called the Take It Down Act just passed out of the Senate unanimously. And why this is so important, Irv, is because it will hold the big tech companies responsible within 48 hours. If they don't take down, this is the bottom line, harmful content, they will be criminally charged. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. I believe this will help snowball. We have about 20 other pieces of legislation to go along with all this. If we could just get one thing through, this is the one thing that's happening right now. I do believe with the new administration, we're going to see a lot of great things. I have to believe that, because if I don't, it's too horrible to go in the other direction. There are no guardrails. We're not stealing anybody's privacy. It's nothing about that. It's about big tech having a little bit of responsibility here as they make billions off of our backs and our children's backs. Let's get into your book. Let's finish up with that. Now, we agreed that your next book will be about Jack Solo and AI, right? This is what this is.
Well, I would have to do a lot of studying.
No, but I did. I saw. I'm joking, but not. But here's what I want to ask you, Irv. I saw something you posted about a Sherlock Holmes book. You're obviously working on something new. Can you share some info with us?
I've been a writer all my life, but for my career, I work for the Department of Justice, and as you know, they own you body and soul. I couldn't publish any of my works because I was an agent of the Department of Justice, and everything has to be approved by the Department of Justice. And I could have asked, but I know what the answer would have been. So
Yes.
It would have been no, or they wouldn't have given me an answer at all. It would have just sat on someone's desk for years and years and years. So I'd been writing all my life, and when I retired is when I started publishing novels. And so I written these novels quite a bit. I updated them for the times and things like that. But I had already written these novels, before I retired. So once I retired, I started publishing my books, and I published 5. And the latest one, I got a copy right here, is Forever. Let me see, Forever Solo, Night of the Dragon. And it's got a dragon on the back. It's really cool. And you can, if you just type my name into Amazon, just type in Irv Brandt, all my books come up. And like I said, I'm not trying to make a profit on these books. I give them away, but my publisher won't allow me to give them away because
they're
they have to make a profit. They're in business.
No, people should buy them, actually. Yeah.
So I set the price at the lowest possible thing, cut all my profit out of it and set it at the lowest, price that I'm allowed to set, that my publisher says that I can set. So you can get all 5 of the novels if you're an ebook reader, if you have a Nook, or if you have a Kindle or Apple or Google or however you do your e-reading, whatever platform you use. You can get all 5 of the novels for less than $15.
15?
So yeah, $15. All 5 of them for less than $15. So because I just want people to read it and enjoy it. Like I said, I don't care if I make any money at all on this. But I got this one. This is my second novel, and it's Solo Journey Buddha Nights, and it's Nights with a K, Nights of Buddha. And the reason why I bring this up, because I think your viewers and your fans would find this book particularly interesting, is because it has to deal with, in this Jack Solo mystery, Jack Solo, a friend of his, her sister disappears from Kiev. And she had a Russian boyfriend, and Jack Solo, as a favor, starts to look for her. And he, during this, investigation, he finds out that her boyfriend is a member of a Russian crime syndicate, and that he's trafficking her in Southeast Asia. So Jack Solo goes to Cambodia and Thailand to look for her. He wants to rescue her. And during the investigation, he finds out that they're also plotting to steal the Emerald Buddha from the temple in the royal city in Bangkok. Wow. So Jack has to, rescue this woman, then B, also stop, and recover the Emerald Buddha. And the reason why I say that your viewers might be interested in it is because I kind of detail the sex trafficking trade in Southeast Asia, how these things are happened, how women get lured in by promises of modeling jobs or, television roles and things like that. Then they find themselves in a situation that they could have never imagined, and they don't have an out. People just took advantage of them. And this is what happens in this case. And this is what Jack Solo is investigating. And like in all my books, of course, they're works of fiction, but they're based on reality. These were my cases, not the theft of the Emerald Buddha from the royal city, but everything that leads up to it. All the bars and the restaurants and the places and things that Jack Solo goes. Well, Irv Brandt has gone. These are my experiences, and I think you would find this, and your viewers would find this one of interest. And of course, if you read that one, then you'll get addicted, and you'll want to read all of them.
Well, I'm going to have full disclosure, Irv. I'm going to be ordering all 5 when we're done here, because I love to read on an airplane. That's when I'm going a lot of different places. That's like my, I'll save that for the airplane. I'll save that.
Yes.
And so that's why
they're
I love getting on the airplanes.
They're perfect airplanes read.
No, but I mean, I read. I don't not sleep on airplanes.
No, and it's perfect for an airplane because they're not, some of the books are long, but they're pretty quick reads and they're easy reads. And you can, it will make the time go by on an airplane. It's just like your goal. And one other thing that I want to say about this is that these books are suitable for readers of any age. There's some harsh issues that I deal with in the books, but I don't use graphic, violence, or I don't use, they're not graphic. I try to explain it in a way that doesn't upset people, and there's no swearing in the books or anything like that. So, any child that's on a reading level, and a reading comprehension, you could give them a Jack Solo novel and not be concerned.
So like a 12-year-old could, a 12-year-old?
Absolutely. I wrote these books when I was writing the books. My biggest fan was my mother. And so I always wrote my books
with your mother,
because she's my number one fan. She was my number one fan. And so I wrote my books, geared towards her. And after she passed and I started to publish the books, I saw no reason to change it, so it's just my style of writing. So if like some of my friends that aren't fans of my novels, they get my novels because it's me, but they tell me, and I hear this a lot, well, I don't read your books, but my kids love your books. They love Jack Solo.
I actually like that. I like that better than adults reading the books, because it can give the kids, first of all, they're reading a book, even if they're doing it, and I don't like to do this because I'm a big promoter at the Warriors of actual books. A book, you turn the page, you feel good when you finish it. I'm even like Irv, I like the smell of books. I tell this to people when I do speeches and things. But no matter how they read, if kids are reading and tracking, we have a tremendous problem in schools because they use their devices all the time. They can't track when the teachers are telling me this across the country. And also, this also gives their minds to explore, right? To visualize. They're not just seeing something, they can think about it. So I love it. And do not worry, Irv, I will have all the information in the body of this video where they can get these books. Now, what about any talk of making this into some sort of series or movies? Because if the kids are liking it, that's the moneymaker, kids. Seems like a no-brainer. I know it's tough, but
there's always a chance. I have said, of the things that we've seen on Netflix and Prime and, different, Paramount or whatever. I always thought Jack Solo would be a great series. I do, but So are millions of others. I mean, you know how show business is. There's only, it's like writing itself. It's like being an artist in any form. I've been in Paris and ridden the trains, and there's a girl playing for coins, a violinist, and she could be first chair in any orchestra, around the world, but she's playing for coins, on a metro train. There's so many talented people out there, and only a select few get to make a living at it, get to do it for a career. And I understand that. And I like to think that, my books are good, but I'm not Hemingway. I'm
Irv, you're
not.
far too humble. You're far too humble here. I see a complete series on Netflix. Not like I could just see it as you're talking, kind of thing. And they do need some decent content. There's a lot of content out there, but not a lot of great content. I'll just leave it at that. That's another discussion. But you're far too humble, Irv. I'm not accepting it. It should be a series, but we're going to leave that for a minute. Especially the kids liking it, because we have a lot of content over the last, I'm going to say about a decade. I'll just pigeonhole it like that on Netflix. That's basically inappropriate. They deem it for kids, or they say, well, it's for 18 plus, but the characters in it are teenagers,
Mhm.
which draws, it's very weird. So the kids, of course, are going to watch it, right? And then these predator weirdo types, for lack of better words, or we're actually a family show, so I'll just leave it at weirdo types. They'll watch it to look at the kids. We've had a lot of problems with Netflix, a lot of campaigns to change it up. The good news, Irv, is the Alpha Gen or Gen Alpha, this new 0 to 14 age bracket. In all of our focus groups, not only that we have at the Warriors across the country, they are, and see, this is something, Irv, I wish media would talk about more. They are relaying to us. So basically 0 is newborn. You can't count that, but like 8, 10, 12, 14, they want to, there's a swing back, the pendulum back to, they want to see what family entertainment is. Can you believe it? Like this should be all
Thank
over the
God.
media. They want, like 12-year-olds, they want to see, what does the family with the dad and the mom look like? Believe it or not. They ask me, like, how did people date?
Right.
They're like, I'm like, well, you meet them at work, you meet them at a restaurant, you
Mhm.
meet through friends. They don't even have that concept. It's not their fault because sort of 30 and under has been born in this digital internet bubble. So
Mhm.
everything's online for them. Their world is online for them. But that's good news that the younger ones are realizing they want to watch, believe it or not, even shows like Friends, which was that big show based here
Right.
in New York. Uh, they're craving that. They are picking up books and they are enjoying putting down the phones for a little bit each day. So I'm saying we have a lot of positives going on with the younger ones. We're still working on that middle group, but this is all good news. So I really have high hopes with legislation, and we're getting phones out of the classrooms. A lot of great stuff is going on. Finish us up with. You didn't really answer me. What was that Sherlock Holmes book? What was that I saw? You posted something online.
Oh, I'm
I just thought of
doing.
that as I was talking.
Okay, no, as my novels have evolved from my first novel, uh, Going Solo, The Gospel of Luke, was written first person present tense. You only saw what Jack Solo sees. You know, and as I progressed as a writer, I started, you could hear the thoughts of other characters and things like that. And also, I started things happening in the past, then coming to the present, and how things are full circle. Like, for example, in Forever Solo, the book begins 5,000 years ago and it ends in the exact same spot 5,000 years later. That, you know, from beginning to end, past and present go back and forth. And so the book that I'm researching and I'm developing ideas now, a lot of it takes place in late 19th century London. And you really can't write about late 19th century London without writing about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his character Sherlock Holmes. So I bought the collection, the Sherlock Holmes collections, because like you, I like books. I didn't just download them onto my phone to read. I bought the collection on Amazon, and that's what I'm doing as part of my research. So I have a basis of knowledge, when I'm
Right.
writing about late 19th century London and just the feel of how law enforcement was perceived by the public and how things were done, how because of course it's been over a century. Investigations are done a little differently today than they were, 100 years ago. So it just helps me with my writing. So that's the post that you saw on, I believe it was my Instagram and my Facebook, and it showed the collection. That's the reason behind it, is for research, a small part of the research for the new novel.
You're getting Irv the vibes of what it was
Exactly.
like, which is
That's
very important. It's very important to
that's
say
exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm
what
trying to get the
what's
vibes.
the vibes, because look how we live today. You have to
Completely
get the
different.
vibes. You have to, and that can only be through something like what you're doing. Or finish us up. Give us some final thoughts. What do you want to leave the warriors with, the public with? Anything? Obviously, we're going to have to continue talking. Let us speak again, soon. 'Cause things are changing on a dime around America, around the world. But give us some final thoughts for the warriors.
Well, the final thought would be, Lynn, that your viewers and your supporters are the most important part of what we do, because they're the people that make the change. They're the people that bring the pressure to bear, that say, no more. They draw the line in the sand and they say, this far, no further. We're not going to accept this, because me and you and Nancy, we can't do it alone. We put it out there, but it's the people that watch and support you that are that's why you call them Lynn's warriors. They are the warriors. We're not the warriors. They're the warriors. So I applaud them. I applaud all of them, for the great work that they do, because without them, it would be hopeless.
Irv, I'm glad you said that, because our hashtag at the Warriors is community creates change. So even though we fight in state capitals, we fight in DC, with all of that, we need community in the home, in the town, in the city, the rural area. We need those people when we have take actions or just be aware of things, or to go into their schools, community centers, places of worship, get this information out there into the hands of people. That to me is the most important, because legislation, as you know, Irv, lots of red tape. We just had one piece of legislation pass in the last several years for real child safety type of thing, accountability. But in the meantime, look at all those children that were exploited. So we need the community. So I'm glad you said that, Irv. Irv Brandt, you are terrific. We want to thank you for your great service to our country. All of your information will be in the body of the video. We want everybody to buy the books, to get on board with Jack Solo, to get on board with Irv Brandt, where you can purchase everything. And I want to say to you, Irv, thank you so much for spending, the time and explaining to us from your perspective what it's like to be in law enforcement on that side of it, right? Because we get a lot of backlash. We don't understand the importance with law enforcement as being our partners, as being our friends, and getting the work done together in the community. So we thank you for all of it. But Irv, promise me, we are going to speak again soon, because like I said, well, I'm going to start with you and Jack Solo are definitely warriors, and there's always a lot to talk about.
Well, Lynn, it's a matter of pride now that I'm called one of Lynn's warriors. I'm going to add that. I'm going to add that to my bio. When you see my next novel published, where it says, crime analyst and panelist, it's also going to say one of Lynn's warriors. I'm very proud to add that. I'm very proud to add that.
Well, Irv, you made my day. You know what? I'm going to add you to our website with your permission, under our partnerships, because I like
Absolutely.
to. Okay, I got your permission, so that's going up today. But thank you. Please stay safe, be well, and Irv, let us speak again soon.
Yes. Lynn, anytime.
Thank.
Call anytime.
I got your number. Don't worry.
Okay.
Thanks, Irv. Speak again soon. Bye bye.
Bye.